Well, welcome everybody for the OpenE webinar that we're having today on February 12th, 2013. My name is Todd Maxwell and we're going to be talking about how to access iSCSI volumes without downtime when the failover is disabled. This is kind of unique because we're going to then configure the MPIO to be able to access the data on the physical IP addresses when failover is disabled. Disabling failover, then changing the settings, and then enabling the failover back. And then of course we're going to disable the MPIO on the ESX. So we're going to kind of go over some of these steps to show you what it's like and how it's going to be performed. As you see right now on the screen, I have the vSphere client where I'm running ESX 5.1 and I'm running a virtual machine right now. And you can see that I'm using Ubuntu. So where is this coming from? Well, I have on my datastore here that this is pointing to my auto failover config, and I got about 100 gig. And here it's connected through my storage adapters. If we look here on my iSCSI software adapter in VMware, and I look at the paths, this is pointing to the DSS v7 for the auto failover in active passive mode. So let's bring up the DSS v7. And so what I want to show you is currently we have it running. So let's go up to the top. So we see the status is running okay. And then we have it in the active on node A. Here you see that I have my ping nodes, they're reachable, and also my auxiliary paths. Pretty much a lot of you already know how to configure this. There's some documentation and videos on how to set this up. But just going over just simple stuff here is that you want to have two auxiliary paths, as many as you know. Here you see the .6220, which is my ETH6 NIC, and that's my volume replication NIC. So I'm definitely going to want to have my auxiliary paths on one of those. And then of course on my storage access client NICs on ETH2. I have that set as well as for ETH1 matching the same IP address subnetwork. So here I'm using on ETH2 for my node A 2.220 and then on node B 2.221. If we look at our ping nodes, it's recommended to have more than one. Don't use another DSS for your ping node. A preferred ping node would be, let's say, your VM server, VMware server, your ESX server, Hyper-V, a Xen, a firewall, something that's going to have a great uptime. So again, we recommend having more than one, and here we are seeing that they're both reachable. So when the status is not reachable, maybe you're in a VLAN, maybe the NIC is down or it's been blocked. So you want to verify that you're able to ping it before you set your ping nodes. If we scroll down, we see we have our failover trigger policy. Here I've got it set to the default. I like to use this because sometimes I see customers with several arrays. They may have, let's say, a SATA array, a SAS array coming from the same controller because they're doing some type of performance needs for the SAS and maybe just a bit bucket for the SATA array. So if there's a problem with the RAID controller or array that's related to it, it may be an issue, and you probably want to set it for any volume. This way the failover can take place and you can go ahead and schedule maintenance to have it worked on. Okay, as we come on down, we'll see that the resource pool manager, here you see that I have one of the tasks that's being replicated. Here you'll see the volume replication 1 task that I have with the logical volume LV00. And of course I have my virtual IP addresses. This is meaning that I'm using MPIO because I'm using multiple NICs. I have 2 virtual IP addresses. You'll see them on the left where it is 192.168.10.1 and then below 11.1. They're going to be placed on top of ETH2 on the local node interface and on ETH3 of the local node. And here on, I've also placed it and assigned it for ETH1 and 2 on the remote. Now, one of the things that you're going to need to know when you connect to with the initiator of the VMware, I like to go ahead and get this done right away. So when I like to get the iSCSI target name, so I just go to Configuration, iSCSI Target Manager, and I go to Targets. And this is where you can create your new targets and assign your iSCSI logical volumes to. On the left I have my default target, target 0, which would be my alias name. And when you do the replication, you got to make sure that, and I always kind of point this out, that the SCSI ID and the LUN number and the target name that you see here must be identical on the remote node. So make sure you do that before you perform your auto failover steps, or you'll get an error pointing you back to completing that. Now that we've copied the IQN name, let's go into VMware. So what we're going to do when we first stop the auto failover, what I like to do is, let's say we need to take the system down. Normally you can put the virtual machine on suspend. In this case, I like to shut it down. I've seen a couple times where there might be an error. This way it prevents it from any other issues that you need to troubleshoot. So we'll go ahead and shut down the virtual machine. And now we'll go into the configuration under storage adapters, and we'll go to the iSCSI software adapter in VMware. Go to click on properties. And here we have a static discovery. So I want to remove my static discovery because these are my virtual IP addresses that we're connecting with the auto failover. Let's go ahead and take that one, and we'll take both of them out. Now next, once that's removed, we're going to go over here to the tab called Network Configuration. So here I'm using MPIO. Here these are on the same subnet. If you look here, the IP address down here on the bottom, you'll see the 11.230. We're going to go ahead and remove that guy, and of course the 10.230. Okay, now once this is removed, we'll go ahead and click close and let it do a rescan. Now let's go ahead and bring up the DSS v7. We'll go to Setup, Failover. Now we're going to stop the failover service. So currently we have its status running. Also, I want to point you out, if you perform this on node B, it'll work the same. If we click on node A and stop it, you'll see node B is going to all of a sudden update itself. Let's click refresh, and it is going to be stopping. So it communicates to each other very seamlessly. So as it's stopping, we can go ahead and go back to the VMware. Here we see that there are no devices or paths, and let's go ahead and enter the IP addresses of the storage access clients NICs from the DSS. To verify that, very simple. What we'll do is we'll just go back to DSS. Here you see that it is stopped and it's ready to be started again. But let's look at those NICs that we've signed. So here, if we scroll down, where we have the virtual IP addresses are gone, we know that they were on E2 and E3. So what you want to do is we'll just go back to the network interfaces, and let's look at E2. So here on E2 I have 3.221. We don't want to connect to that because this is node B. So what I'm pointing out to you is you want to really go back to node A. And the reason why I wanted to point this out is because we're an active passive. So you can only connect to the source volume. So what I want to show you is that if you go to Configuration Volume Manager and then Volume Replication, here you could see that the volume is in destination mode. So we don't want to connect to that one. So we want to connect to the one that's in source. So let's go to node A and then find him. Configuration, then Volume Manager, Volume Replication, and here in this active passive scenario, that this logical volume is in source mode. We can connect to that one, and we can keep sending and updating data to this one and connect to it so we can get our virtual machine back up. So let's go ahead and look at our setup, our network interfaces. And if we see E2, we'll get the IP address to verify it because this was in our virtual IP address configuration. Here it's 2.220. bearing the first two octets of 192.168, and E3, which should be 192.168, 3.220. So we want to be able to plug those in the initiator from the VMware side. So let's go ahead and add our static settings. First, I've copied the target name. If you remember, we did that previously under the iSCSI Target Manager. Now we want to be able to put in the storage client access NICs on the DSS v7. So here we're going to enter 2.220, which is our source volume, not our destination, just like what we wanted to point out. Okay, once that's done, we'll add our target name and, of course, the other storage client access NICs. So this will be 3.220. So this is allowing me to be able to do MPIO and also connect to that target. Now we're going to go to the tab on the left called Network Configuration. Here we want to add the VM kernel adapters for the iSCSI port binding requirements. So what we're going to be using is an IP that's already been set for the VM kernel that I've set right here. Here you'll see 2.10, so it's on the same subnet. We'll go ahead and add him. And then of course I'm going to add one more. And we'll add the VM kernel number 6, which will be 3.10, that is on the same subnet as the other storage client access NICs on the V7. Alright, once we close this, it's going to rescan the adapter. This takes a second, and then what we're going to be able to see is that hopefully we're going to see these two paths being populated right up under the iSCSI adapter for the VMware, and we see that we have them both active. Now I like to verify this because I want to use MPIO. I've already set this up, but let's say you don't see both of them stating active IO. Well, what you want to do is go to storage, and here you can see we're already connected to it. What you want to do is right click on it, go to properties, right here on the right, go to manage paths. And here, normally what you would see is in case one of these would be, let's say by default, you would have this condition to make MPIO working for multipath, so you'd have performance plus path failover. All you have to do is just make sure you click on this one, change it to round robin VMware, and then this will both be set for active IO. And that's what you want to really look for. Once we complete this, then we go back and start our virtual machine. And so now what we're going to be able to do is you can see that the auto failover has been disabled. We're not using the virtual IP addresses. We're using the NICs that are used for the storage client access on the DSS v7 for with that the virtual IP addresses were used before. So as you can see, we're up and running. And that's great. So that it kind of shows you that you can do this not only just with VMware, you can do this with Microsoft, Hyper-V, Linux operating system, a Microsoft operating system. So if you want to schedule maintenance to do some tunings on your failover, you could still access your data or your virtual machines. Now, you can, like I said, pause it. If we pause this right here, suspend. I'm going to suspend the machine. And what we'll do is go on to the VMware storage adapters. Go down here to the iSCSI software adapter. We're going to change the parameters. And what we're going to do is reverse the process. So let's say you've completed your auto failover settings, your tunings, maybe you're changing your iSCSI target settings, maybe some DRB detunings, and you want to be able to put the auto failover back on. Okay, so you've suspended. In some cases you probably don't want to do this. You want to verify if it's 4.1 or 5.0. Sometimes it's not good. Or 5.1, it seems to be fine when I suspend it and be able to go ahead and make these changes. It's going to obviously show up the connection to be dead. So let's go ahead and remove one of the target IP addresses and the targets totally from the initiator. And now we'll go to network configuration. We will remove those VM kernel adapters. And let's close it. Now it's going to rescan. Obviously you're seeing on the top left, it's unknown. We've obviously lost our connection. The virtual machine is down. Very simple. What we want to do is go back to DSS v7, go to setup and failover. And you can go to either one. So here again, I got node A or node B. If I go to node B, I can also turn on the failover. This is what's really the beautiful thing about the DSS v7 feature, especially with the active, and active passive capabilities of the failover. We could start it anywhere. So either one of them, node A or B, will work. So now it's starting. We'll go ahead now, go back to VMware, and let's go ahead and enter our virtual IP address. So here we're going to enter the target name. and then the virtual IP addresses. So in my virtual IP address scheme, we have 192.168.10.1. And once that's entered, we'll enter our next one. So we'll go 192.168.11.1. And once that's complete, we'll go to our tab over here, Network Configuration. We're going to add in our VMware kernel adapter. Here is 11.230, which is on the same subnet as one of my virtual IP addresses. And then the next one is 10.230, which is also one of my other VIP addresses on 10. Which is 10.1. Okay, before we go ahead and rescan, let's go to see if DSS is running. Yes, it looks like our failover is back on and running on both of the nodes. We can go back to our initiator at VMware. Let's go ahead and select close and let it rescan. So this should happen just a second, and there we go. Now let's verify our paths. It's seeing them both as active, so it's good. It means it's held its properties. Now let's go to the storage. We see it is not updated, but just give it a second, it'll refresh. Sometimes I force it to refresh. And there we go. So now we have it. Now we see the Ubuntu virtual machine up and online. So let's go ahead and turn back the power on. And let's watch it in console. There you go. So what we did was we failed the failover. We still connected through the storage IP address NICs that are on the DSS v7 that were supporting the virtual IP address. Then we accessed our data, our virtual machine, you keep running. Then we enabled the back. We took out the storage access client NICs from the initiator on VMware. Then what we did is we went ahead and we turned back on failover and enabled the virtual IP addresses, and we're able to continue. So it's a really unique way to be able to access your iSCSI targets when failover is disabled. Well, thank you everybody. If you have questions, please send them in. We'll always be available, and we'll see you next time on the next webinar. If you have any questions, again, it's always pre-sales@open-e.com, and we'll be happy to reply to any questions you have. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.